With us today, we have Fikri Firat. He's the product manager for strategic projects at Voxbone. He has experience as a systems designer and science teacher, and those propelled him into a telephony career. His current focus is on artificial intelligence and its integration with life and business processes. He's going to help us look into the rise of CPaaS and what VoIP applications need to succeed in an enterprise market. The title of his talk is How Open Source Projects Catalyzed Cloud Communications. Let's give a big ClueCon round of applause to Fikri Firat.
Hello everyone, thanks for having me here at ClueCon. My name is Fikri, I work at Voxbone, and today I want to have a closer look at how big open source projects like Camelio, FreeSwitch, and Asterisk disrupted the telephony or telecommunications industry and helped define the cloud communications space and the market as we speak today. I work at Voxbone. Voxbone is a global communications as a service platform with its voice and SMS services over 65 countries with virtual phone numbers. And I lead the strategic products and partnerships. And as part of that, I've been spending a lot of time working with the biggest cloud communications platforms. Luckily, most of them are already customers to Voxbone and interconnected to our network. So I've been looking at how they've interconnected to our platform and how their mindset on the solution architecture in terms of peering and trunking has changed over the time. In order to take a closer look, I've drilled it down to 5 main pieces. So first, I want to take a closer look at the brief history of VoIP and how it evolved through time in terms of applications and the systems. And then I will jump into some extracted points on how that correlates with the cycles of innovation in software and how that translates into telephony software in general. And then I will close by looking at the state of cloud communications today, stating some key challenges that both integrators, vendors, and customers are facing, and then look at the future challenges that we might be facing because of this change in mindset. So let's take a dive into the history of VoIP. So it looks like it started off in 1991. With the first free application for peer-to-peer communication called Speak Freely. Obviously, back then there was no standards or no clear definition of how this should work. But this was one guy who later on wrote the initial AutoCAD software, just distributed freely over the internet with encrypted voice and peer-to-peer communications. And 4 years later, there was the first true iPhone. It was also called the Internet phone, the first commercial IP telephony product, a very closed system with physical hardware and highly expensive too. But it was the first successful commercial application of IP telephony. And then a year later, it received enough attraction that the biggest names in the tech industry came together to define a standard on establishing standards for voice over the IP network, IP protocol. And that enabled more platforms or more vendors to come up with such services. And 3 years later, the SIP standard was released along with the release of Asterisk, the first PBX platform that's open source that allows anyone to build their own IP telephony system or anyone to offer that as a service to their customers. And obviously after that, the adoption and the benefits were more clear to businesses on moving to an IP solution. And 2001 marked the milestone of voice traffic surpassing data traffic over the IP for the first time in the US. So it had the adoption, it had created the market of VoIP communications, but now it's subject to some disruption for innovation and true software. And that was in between 2002 and 2006. It was extended further with more open source projects that enabled doing much more with telephony and communications like Camellia and FreeSwitch. Meanwhile, Voxbone was founded to sort of pitch the idea of voice over IP to the regulators across the globe so that we can have virtual phone numbers to have access to such applications in any country through the PSTN. And 2 years later, Twilio was founded with a hosted, not truly cloud, but hosted platform for telephony and SMS. And it received a lot of success with developers because of the ease of use on getting into that platform. And 2 years later, there were several others that tried doing the same thing and sort of helped define the CPaaS market for having APIs exposed over the internet for developers to build communications experiences and applications. And a year later, it was a time for WebRTC. Again, the biggest names in the tech industry came together to have a proper solution to enable any device that is connected to the internet to do real-time communications over the internet and have open APIs for any developers to build such applications. So that had a huge impact in terms of how communications applications are built, deployed, scaled, and extended in terms of experience, and helped any company to build endpoints that are actually in the cloud or over the internet, sort of creating the CaaS or creating a disruption in the cloud industry by enabling anyone, especially in the tech and internet industry, to build communications experiences and offer that as a service. And we've seen the biggest internet companies like Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, Google enter the market, and the legacy vendors trying to move their portfolio to the cloud. Now, and I believe we are seeing a trend over here in terms of the impact of having an extended open source project and then creating a market and disrupt another one and keep iterating. And but it all started with a simple idea of a free peer-to-peer application. But where did that idea come from? So it was emerging through a need, but in the nature of innovation, it's always going through a cycle where an idea comes out, and if it's tested successfully, then it creates another idea or creates another market with success. And to put in briefly, innovation for the idea for software would be just an app. And then if app is successful, it can get adopted and monetized through distribution. And with distribution and success of the popularity, you create market demand for users demand more features. And if it's a business application, they would demand more security. So that would create a need for better management of those applications and endpoints, creating a server type of software that would trigger selling or monetizing, distributing systems like IP telephony. And that would trigger, again, flexibility in terms of connecting different systems together so you can have orchestration and a unique workflow. And that flexibility requires sort of an app engine, so you can have APIs by which you can connect different systems together with context. And with the app engine, you now have a platform. You can expose all of the functionality on your solution or service to the public internet or a broader audience by which any developer or any business can develop their own solutions. With platforms, obviously, it's now exposed to many more people, many more businesses, especially across the globe, and then comes the question of scalability of such platforms, which triggers sort of orchestration problems of spinning up new instances on demand anytime you want, and then that enables as a service type of business for applications. And with the as a service now, you're moving all of the on-premise systems that you have full control and visibility to a cloud in order to offload your costs and operation. But now you lack control and transparency, so now you demand reliability of such platform and demand that platform to prove that reliability. So I think that also resonates well with what happened with telephony. It started with Speak Freely as the first free app that's distributed, and then that triggered a commercial application for IP telephony. And IP telephony, as it expanded, users required more advanced call distribution, things like queues, hunt groups, and contact center type of applications, which then helped create the idea of having an asterisk, an open source PBX that would do more like basic things and then extensibility. And that created the business telephony market. To have anyone build endpoints along with the SIP standard, build endpoints and systems that would allow this functionality. And then market demand was for having advanced routing so that they can control the traffic, congestion, and security, so needing sort of a proxy or load balancing system. And that created the idea of having the OpenSer project or Kamailio. And after that, the comms platforms were enabled. So people could build as a business that would serve as a platform for communications. Again, similarly, users would demand more integration with other systems in that case as well, more customization on the end user application, and have orchestrated workflows that works well with any of their underlying business intelligence systems. And that needed the app engine, and the FreeSwitch was released and started, which enabled the CPaaS because the FreeSwitch extensibility and modularity allowed anyone to easily build APIs on top of the core stack, and enabling CPaaS. With the CPaaS, people start realizing that they could do actually a lot more with what they consider communications, not just voice or SMS, but they can combine other types of medium into a single user experience. And that required the need of context passing and omnichannel. And then WebRTC was created to allow that functionality to open source how people communicate with voice, video, and data over the internet. And that created the CaaS industry. With the CaaS, now we are looking at problems or question marks for how do I achieve security over a cloud-based solution? How do I ensure quality of service on my voice applications and communications? And how do I ensure compliance? All that said, we're seeing certain trends in terms of what's going on in the cloud communications industry and how that looks like as a challenge for people who are working on it. So the first thing we realize is it's constantly disrupted by open source. It's prone to be disrupted, especially now with the internet and tech companies, like especially with containers like Docker, Kubernetes, and how that can be used as a way to build a scalable communications platform. And secondly, the infrastructure as a service being more abundant and available to anyone at cheaper rates and on demand. Having AWS, Google Cloud, Azure makes it possible for anyone to build such a service on demand easily and scalable way. And most of the platforms, both platforms, vendors, and enterprises are either in the process of migrating to the cloud, or they have already migrated into a purely cloud-based solution. Obviously, that means moving on to a different platform or moving to the cloud version of their existing platform. All of those three dictate a different mindset in terms of how these networks are configured, managed, and maintained. So we are seeing lots of new challenges emerging, both for users, developers, and the vendors. So this is mostly coming out of the conversations we have with the customers who are in the space of cloud communications, and most of the big players, if not all, are already interconnected to Voxbone's network, mainly because of compliance. So what I mean by compliance is not just PCI and HIPAA or GDPR compliance. That's nowadays sort of a given for any platform to make a decision to purchase. But there's also the local regulations in every market in terms of how you use a cloud communications platform experience in a certain country. And those are highly regulated in territories mostly around Europe and in the APAC region. So compliance would be a key challenge for anyone moving to the cloud, for especially a global business or building a global solution. And next would be quality of service along with connectivity. How do I connect my existing SIP trunk or PRI line or SDN line to the solution I have in the cloud, even though that doesn't add much in terms of functionality to my problem, but it's a must on how I communicate with my customers. And along with these three, we're expecting to see more regulations in terms of how cloud communications businesses and applications are monitored across the globe. Both in the US and in Europe, this is becoming a project that they would investigate just after launching the GDPR. And we are seeing a trend towards having more control over such communications. So, but how does that look like today in terms of when moving to a cloud-based solution or thinking about moving your solution to the cloud? So this is a typical diagram of when a customer wants to move to the cloud or being forced to the cloud because their vendor said, we will not continue improving this product. You will have to move to the cloud if you want to benefit from these new features or APIs. But the customer as an enterprise has the on-premise hardware and licensing that they've already invested heavily in, and they already had the network engineering teams, and they have the local PSTN line. But for them today, there is no way that they can connect that physical line to the cloud-based solution, other than having that local gateway in place. In this scenario, it's a good example to point out the single wire connector, in that you can connect a FreeSwitch instance through an access network to the single wire cloud. But in this case, the physical line is still coupled, and a huge deal breaker for anyone trying to move to the cloud, because they will still need to keep that box or software or the physical line, even though they're being sold the cloud solution. The better way of doing this would be having not the local connection to your premise, but have the cloud platform connect to any SIP trunk provider over the internet through a peering network. In this case, the customer is either migrating their existing physical line to a virtual SIP trunk through the peering network that's provided by the cloud platform. In this case, like most of the cloud platforms today are built on AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud, but most of them don't have an interface by which you can achieve such functionality. In this case, we're just moving the local PSTN line, physical line, to a cloud-based solution. For an integrator that is building such a solution for migration or a new customer, that would mean integrating with or testing lots of stuff like the old stuff of DTMF, codecs, voice and SIP, and routing with every single provider if they want to move that existing physical and reliable line to a cloud-based solution. It's also coded BYOC, or bring your own carrier or bring your own connection. And as a Voxbone, we are seeing a significant trend towards moving to such a solution, like using a dedicated SIP trunk provider and connecting that provider to a platform of their choice, where it may be SingleWire, Twilio, Nexmo, or maybe using all of them at the same time to have redundancy and flexibility. But we believe there should be a better solution of having a global SIP trunk provider or a global standard way by which you can do the internet peering, like Jonathan mentioned yesterday, so that both the integrator can have a dedicated way, an automated way of testing and achieving a SIP trunk connection, and have that accessible through the globe to any customer that is located in anywhere in the world. And in that way, the platform offloads any questions and performance related to having the compliance, reliability, quality of service from their software platform to the SIP trunk provider, so that they can focus on actual value creation in the software layer. And as Voxbone, we are very excited to take the lead on in the carrier and communications as a service platform space to help define how the future of SIP trunks or the cloud trunks or the internet peering would work in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Going once. Going twice. All right. Give it up for him again. Big round of applause again for Fikri Firat.
Thank you.